In this lesson, we are going to cover our last command for patterning features. Now, if you want to work along with me, go into your Working Files folder and open the part name, Fill Patterns. So let's begin. I am going to go to the drop down for linear pattern, and notice near the bottom of this drop down menu, we see Fill Pattern. Now, this patterning command is different than the other ones. It's typically used in industry when you want to ventilate a part or add lightning holes. Now, when I say lightning holes, I am referring to adding holes in a part to decrease the weight of a part. The fill pattern command requires that you create a sketch beforehand to define the boundary for the fill pattern. So if we look at the icon here, this dark blue line represents the boundary I am referring to. So let's begin. Let's go to the Sketch tab, create a new sketch, and we'll create a new sketch on this face here. Let's view normal to the sketch, and then I'll create a construction line from corner to opposite corner, and then create a circle and snap to the midpoint, and then apply a smart dimension of 150. Now we have our sketch, and this circle will provide us a boundary for the fill pattern. I'm going to close out of the sketch. Now we can go back to the Features tab, select the drop down for linear pattern, and then select Fill Pattern. My very first window is prompting me for the fill boundary. This is a sketch I just created, so I am going to expand the Feature Manager tree and select that sketch. Now, before we look at pattern layout, let's scroll down to Features to Pattern. Now, we could have created, for example, an extruded cut feature, a hole in the part, and pattern that feature. But instead of doing that, I want to show you Create Seed Cut. When I activate this radio button, notice we get 4 options for our seed cut: circle, square, diamond, and polygon. Let's go with polygon. We'll set our number of sides to 6 for hexagon and our distance to the outside of the circle to 6. Going back up in the Property Manager, you would expect at this point to see something show up in the preview. Nothing is appearing because we have not populated this window here, Pattern Direction. So I'm going to select inside of this window and then select an edge. And notice this edge represents the direction of the pattern. However, if I clear this window and select this edge, notice the pattern is now running in this direction. Now in the Property Manager, we have some pattern layout choices: perforation, circular, square, and then polygon. Let's set it to circular. Now right below this, we have several options here, or several settings that look very similar to one another. When you run into these property managers where you have many options and you're not sure how one is different than the other, my practice has been to always work through each one of them and see what happens on the preview on the screen. So this one here is loop spacing. It's currently set at 31.7 millimeters. Let's decrease it. Now the loop spacing, from what I can see, is a distance between each loop. Here's one loop right here. Here's a second loop here. It's the spacing between the loops. So if we set this to 25, you'll see the distance between the loops is decreased because it's at 25. This next window here is for instance spacing. It's currently at 31.7. Let's set this to 20 and take a look at the preview on the screen. That's the distance between each instance. The next one here is margins. Let's set this to 0. Now, when you set the margins to 0 and you look at this little graphic here, you would expect to see this pattern extending right up to the edge of this fill boundary. And it's not. The reason for that is if we were to add another loop, we would be outside of this fill boundary. So what we need to do, if we do want to add another loop, we can simply click the down arrow to get a negative value And now notice we're outside of the loop by 10 millimeters. And that allows us to add another loop. Moving down the property manager, just like other commands, we can skip instances by going out to the screen and selecting the dot in the middle of each instance. And we can replace them by reselecting the dot. I am going to close out a fill pattern and notice our preview on the screen. So you can create some pretty interesting patterns with this particular command.